Nothing I say in this video is in regards to any specific person or event. I'm sure you'll draw your own conclusions based on the facts that I'm saying and the science that I'm talking about, but I'm not targeting anybody. I strongly urge you to watch to the end of this video where I actually start talking about psychopathy, sociopathy, narcissism, personality disorders, and all of that comes possibly with this industry. This is not to villainize or demonize anybody at all, and that's just about all I can say, I think. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you learned something. Welcome back, guys. This is a video that I actually planned around 5 months ago when I planned the video that I ended up doing with Josh Peck, where we take narcissist and sociopath tests. The reason I wanted to do that video in the first place was I've always been aware of it, but I started realizing a lot of things in the industry and the people around me that I wasn't particularly a fan of. And it made me wonder, am I also this type of person? And as I say in the video, I think it takes a certain type of person in the first place to be an entertainer, and especially a YouTuber, somebody who is constantly, you know, we build our entire lives around being ourselves. We are social media personalities.
Indeed we are.
And people often question what type of people we are. These people have to be narcissists, sociopath, and I believe that could be true because our entire life is like me, like me, like me, like me, broadcast myself, I'm important. There is sort of a grandiose sense of self, right? Because it's like my life is worth looking at. My posts are worth attention.
I would call myself an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. What?
Our entire career is focused around us and what we're creating, and our brand is us. Like I said, it takes a certain type of person to believe that their makeup looks are the ones that deserve to be seen, their stories are the ones that deserve to be told, their opinions are worth being globalized. I mean, millions of people have bad customer service experiences trying to cancel a gym membership. Not many of them tell the story to millions. But I never followed through with this video for a few reasons. One, and probably the main one, being that it seems like everything I say gets turned into shade because people take my words and then apply it to some drama situation that they've created because they're bored, and drama is fun and entertaining. So instead of subjecting myself to the possibility of my words being twisted or taken out of context, I just kept pushing this video off. And another reason would be that mental health is a very, very touchy subject, and I would want to be very careful with the way that I approached it. I am not a doctor. I have no right to suggest a diagnosis on anybody, and I definitely don't want to demonize or mock any form of mental illness. However, since everybody is talking about it right now, I figured if I'm ever going to make this video, now's the time. And I think that I have a lot of really insightful things to say that haven't been said already. I want to start by saying that I actually haven't seen any of Shane's videos on this topic because I don't watch any of my friends' videos ever, for a reason I'll actually get into later. But if you've watched what he's doing over there and some of this is redundant, I'm sorry, but I think that this video is going to be a lot different than what he's doing because he's doing 8 parts on one person, or I believe maybe multiple people. And this is just me talking about the actual science of social media and what it actually does to your brain chemically and your behavior. And I also have to give the disclaimer that this video is not targeted at anybody. This isn't some sneak diss or attack on somebody. I'm not spilling tea or throwing shade. I'm just stating the science and the facts that may contribute to the behavior and mental state of a lot of social media people. Now let me establish my ethos here. Why do I think I have a right to speak on this? Well, as I said, I am not a doctor, but I do have a degree in psychology. I had to do clinical work and research studies to get that degree in psychology. I grew up surrounded with mental illness, and I spent substantial time in therapy breaking a lot of this down. So I feel I have a much better understanding on this than a lot of people, and probably a lot of other YouTubers. Before we get into it, you guys know I'm a huge advocate of betterhelp.com/Gabby. And since we are talking about mental health, if you're experiencing depression, anxiety, rage, grief, any other array of problems, and you feel like you want to talk to somebody, I highly recommend this service. It's an affordable option to therapy. It's a great alternative for people who find face-to-face therapy a little bit intimidating. The reason I haven't talked about this in so long is before they were only offering service to people 18 and older. So I told you guys about it, and a lot of you guys are under the age of 18. You went because you were hoping to get some help. They turned you away because you were a minor and you got discouraged. But I'm very happy to announce there is now actually an option for ages 13 to 17. So instead of being turned away if you're under 18, you'll be forwarded to a sister site dedicated to helping teens. And that's why I wanted to bring this up again. If you're interested in my personal experience with betterhelp.com and the service as a whole, I will leave the link to my full vlog below, along with the link to get you started. Now, the psychology of YouTube. Let's dive in. It's it's gonna get ugly. It actually starts off really, really simple and then it gets very, very convoluted. So I'm gonna make this as digestible as possible. In order to understand what I'm about to explain to you, you first need to understand one of the fundamentals of psychology. It's one of the first things you learn in Psych 101, operant conditioning. To oversimplify, but actually not really because it's pretty simple. Operant conditioning is the association of a voluntary behavior and a consequence. AKA, you do something, you get something. So a hungry rat is in a cage, it presses a lever in the cage on accident and a food pellet comes out. That rat was rewarded with food for pushing the lever. So after that rat accidentally pushes that lever a few times and receives a reward a few times, the rat then associates pushing the lever with getting food. So when the rat wants food, it pushes the lever. So rat gets hungry, rat pushes lever, rat gets food. Now let's apply that to our situation where our rat is an influencer and the reward is attention. This attention is actually scientifically measured in likes, followers, comments, money. So an influencer does something online, people like it, and then the positive reinforcement, the food, just pours in the form of likes, comments, followers, and money. Here's another really important factor. The closer the reward follows the behavior, the stronger the association. So if the rat pushes the lever and a whole minute passes before the rat gets the food, it's gonna take the rat a lot longer to figure out the association between pushing the lever and getting the food. In social media, the reward is instantaneous. So the tie to posting something and getting all that positive reinforcement is really, really strong and hard to break. So you see people really quickly getting sucked into that universe, and before you know it, that entire person's world is completely consumed by social media, and it feels like every time you have a conversation with that person, it always somehow comes back to views, likes, money, followers, brand deals, something in that vein, because that's what they're living, and they're constantly being rewarded for being the most self-centered version of them. I remember when I first started on Vine, early days, the likes and followers came in so quickly that I would literally sit there and refresh my page like this to watch my followers go up. And I had conditioned myself to doing this motion. I would be watching TV or sitting with people and I would be doing this because I was literally rewarded to do this. Even negative attention, hate comments, it's all still reward, which is attention. And that's why you see a lot of channels that thrive on drama, scandal, controversy, because even though they're getting a ton of hate, they're still being positively reinforced for that behavior. They're still getting the views, they're still getting the money, they're still getting the attention. That's why with children, if a child is throwing a tantrum, they tell you to ignore them, don't yell at them, don't try to tell them to be quiet, don't try to appease them, because what the child wants is attention. As soon as you give in to the child, even if it's negative, like taking something that they want or reprimanding them or scolding them, they're still getting attention. Can we get an attention counter on this video? Somebody leave in the comments how many times I say attention. Which leads me to my next point. Why do we want the attention so bad? This could mean a lot of things to a lot of people. I'm honestly so fascinated by the idea of celebrities in general, but that's a whole other video. So we've established that the reward here is attention in the forms of likes and followers. But what do those things actually represent? What does a thumbs up on a photo actually represent? Validation. Here's one theory I have that I think actually holds a lot of weight. I think that self-esteem plays such a huge factor. Obviously, this doesn't apply to everybody, but a lot of the people that you're watching are really pretty severely unhappy with themselves or a very major part of their lives, whether it's their personal relationships, their love life, their friendships, or their career. A lot of people aren't actually doing what they love, but the reward of being a YouTuber is so high that they get stuck in the hamster wheel of what they're doing because it's too hard to leave something they're rewarded so highly for. You also start to question who's who in your life. In YouTube, this has been talked about over and over, especially by me. There's a blurring of lines between your social media life and your real life, or your work and your real life, because your real life becomes your work. So you wonder who's who. Would these people be here for you if you didn't have something to offer them? The followers, the ability to level them up in some way. Is what you're doing sincere or just for appearances? And I'm not just saying that about other people in your life. You start to question that in yourself too.
When it gets to a point where it starts to feel like a job and you're not doing things because you love the person, you're doing them for a vlog. Am I doing this because I love her? Am I doing this for the video? Like, that's toxic for any relationship.
And think about a lot of the people who started on YouTube. Most people started talking to a camera because they didn't have many people in their real life that they could open up to, or were too shy to talk to people, so they talked to a camera. A lot of people dreamed of being popular on the internet because they just weren't in school. A lot of us got into it because we were making connections on the internet that we weren't making in real life. Now, I don't know if that's still true as YouTube gets more and more mainstream, but that's definitely where a lot of it started. So think, you're somebody who's not used to getting very much attention at all, and now you're getting so much attention so quickly. Definitely with AdSense taken into account. Especially a lot of us that came from Vine. Matt Pat actually did an amazing video where he broke down the algorithmic loophole that we all seem to slip through. But basically, a lot of us that came from Vine got a lot of reward very quickly over people who started on YouTube. So again, the reinforcement was undeniable. We're addicted to our phones, we're addicted to social media, and the tighter that association, aka how quickly did you get the followers, how quickly did you make this into your career, the tighter that connection is, and the more you're willing to do and harder you're willing to push to keep that same level of reward. In fact, there's a thing in operant conditioning called an extinction burst, where, back to the rat and the lever, if the rat is used to getting food every time it hits the lever, and all of a sudden the food doesn't come out, the rat starts to panic and pushes that button as many times as it can, trying to get the food to come out. And I think that's a lot of what you see with people really pushing that envelope on YouTube, but you start doing more and more and more until you start to lose your humanity, because you're no longer acting on conscience or feeling, you're acting on the pure psychological impulse that you've built through operant conditioning. And of course, there's a lot of other factors that can come into play. For me, I experienced a lot of neglect as a child, so that manifested in me being desperate for attention and validation as an adult. And for others, it's just an innate narcissism of wanting to perform because you believe that you deserve to be seen over everybody else. And there's really nothing wrong with that. I mean, the world needs entertainers, but now we have these heightened insecurities juxtaposing these inflated egos, and our actual self-worth is balancing on the fingertips of millions of strangers. Never before in the history of mankind has human worth been quite so quantifiable. This is literal numbers on a screen telling you what you're worth today versus last week. How many people like you today versus yesterday? And most scarily, how many people like you compared to your friends? Even if it's unintentional, even if it's subconscious, the constant comparison and competition between you, your friends, and yourself can be truly devastating. Our self-worth is tethered to our analytics, and as they drop, so does our esteem. That is, if you don't check yourself, go to therapy, really reflect, meditate, learn what truly matters in life. Now, let's dive a little bit deeper into specifically what it means for a social media celebrity versus a traditional celebrity. On social media, you get the attention for being you. You get the validation just for living, for showing your lives, your relationships, your friends. This is something I've been really vocal about in my music, the blurring of lines between your real life and your social media life, between friends and colleagues. You start to lose yourself in what's real and what's for camera, who's there for you and who's there for views.
Who am I and when? When's my workday end and where does me begin? Are these my colleagues or my friends?
And you might think, well, if it's so bad, then why are people still doing this? Why are people still dating if they're miserable? Why are people still friends with each other if they're unhappy and not fulfilling one another? Why subject yourself to stress, anxiety, abuse if you could just leave? And it all comes back down to the rat with the lever. People will say where they're rewarded as long as the reward outweighs the punishment. It's the cycle of abuse. People always ask, if he hits you, why would you stay? And it all just comes down to conditioning. In an abusive relationship, there's some form of physical, mental, or emotional abuse, but it's always followed by a sign of affection, a sorry, a gift, sex, intimacy, which is, you guessed it, attention and validation. The feeling of love and validation is overpowering the abuse that you're going through. Or, in social media, the likes, followers, and money are overpowering the toxicity of the relationship. Let's jump back again really quick to that blurring of lines between social media and real life. We don't have a time card. We don't leave at the end of the day and go home. Most people act differently when they go to work or when they hang out with their friends. But just remember, we are all showing you what we choose to show you. We have the ability to shape the narrative of our biography. And it's up to you guys to determine what's real and who's real. Here's my general rule. When you see somebody doing something nice on camera and you think, wow, that's a really good person. That was an amazing, sweet thing to do. Just ask yourself, would that person have done that thing if there was no camera involved? Here's the thing about being a good person. Good people aren't obsessed with everybody knowing that they're a good person. Good people do good things quietly. Again, if there was no camera, would this be happening? Now, that's not to take away from any of the good that's being done. If somebody wants to go and hand out food to the homeless and their intentions are just to get views from it, those homeless people are still getting food. But that still doesn't say much about that person's character. Now, here's where it gets to the good stuff, the nitty-gritty stuff that you guys are all waiting for. When it comes to an actual mental disorder, narcissism, antisocial personality disorder, sociopathy, psychopathy, you can't just diagnose those things through a YouTube video. Again, people are showing you what they want to show you, and they're showing you what is going to give them the highest reward. The problem with sociopaths is oftentimes sociopaths are actually really difficult to spot. Sociopaths are extremely charming, highly intelligent, and are really, really good at feigning emotion. So you might see somebody cry when they experience something that might elicit that type of emotion, like a death or a tragedy or a breakup. Or on the other side, when something really happy happens, like an engagement or a pregnancy, or your friend just got a huge promotion. They might act scared when they think that people might be scared. They might act nervous when they think that people might feel nervous in that situation. But they don't actually feel those things. They don't feel much at all. And the fact of the matter is, sociopaths do live amongst us, not just on social media. Some of the most successful people on the planet are sociopaths because, again, they're charming, they're cunning. And here's the important part: they don't give a fuck about anybody else. They're really, really good at pretending like they do, but they don't care if somebody gets hurt in the process, physically or emotionally. And it's not even that they're looking to hurt others. They just don't care if they do. All they're thinking about is getting what they want out of it, whether it be a job promotion, sex, or in this case, views. If they do something that hurts somebody, they're very good at avoiding blame, passing blame, making excuses. They're extremely manipulative. They treat people and animals like pawns. They're great at convincing others to do things they would never do themselves. And they're wildly successful and generally pretty well liked. So the villains of YouTube probably aren't the sociopaths. Sociopaths are generally much better at hiding it. So, what we see in social media is extremely high reward with virtually no punishment. Influencers can make millions and millions of dollars for being an asshole. And since they're making millions and millions of dollars, they can afford to surround themselves with people who won't tell them that what they're doing is wrong. There's zero accountability for their actions, so they will continue to repeat that cycle. And I don't need to name specific cases because I think we all know them. And some of them maybe you hadn't thought about before. And yes, they get hate, but as we discussed, hate is still at the end of the day what the influencer wants: attention. They come out unscathed because for the most part people will still watch. A view and a hate view are worth the exact same amount on Google AdSense. And that about wraps it up for now, I guess. Obviously I could go on for hours about the psychology of YouTube and all the nuances of specific situations and anecdotal things, but I think this was a nice overview and hopefully you learned something from it. Hopefully you have a better understanding of it. I had fun. Did you? If you did, leave this video a thumbs up. Subscribe. I'm a sociopath. This is this week's showstopper of the week. Thank you for being so supportive. You're so cool. As always, I love you very much. Thank you for being a part of my family, and I'll see you next time.
You don't see the scene that's behind the screen, and I urge you all to be aware of it. It's an interesting dichotomy of monetized sincerity, stir up my insecurity with constant uncertainty, generation of anxiety, the look at me society, dubiety, a piety, the gods will suffer silently. I'm sorry for my obsession with attention. I have an ungodly fear of rejection. My apprehension and objection is the viral infection of dollars and followers.